觀眾大家好，歡迎大家收看今天的課程。今天我們要講的是描述文的段落。很高興今天邀請到 Alan 老師。
From songs to long novels, being able to describe something is fundamental to telling a story. So when you read about descriptive writing, sometimes you'll hear people say painting a word picture. When we do this, we need to entice as many of the senses as possible.
好，我们说到這個，無論是這種歌曲啊，或是要講一個長篇的小說啊，講述故事的這種基礎啊 ，fundamental 就是基礎啊，是能夠描述這個事情哦。當你啊讀到這種描述性，就是 descriptive 這個字叫描述性的寫作的時候呢，有時候你會聽到人家說一句話，就是說你要利用文字，它來描寫一個圖像出來，讓你的讀者呢，他在腦海中呢又產生這個圖像，就是你描述出來的這個圖像。那當我們這樣做的時候呢，我們需要盡可能的怎麼樣呢 ？entice 這個字呢，就是怎麼樣激發出來，激發你更多的這種感官哦。
So just like you learned in the last unit, it is better to paint this picture with emotion and feeling. Better to do that than to simply just tell the reader what you think and feel. If the reader has a feeling associated with that sense, then they can create a much better picture in their own minds. So this pulls them into the writing more and keeps them invested in the story.
就像我們在上一單元裡面所學到的那樣，就是你最好呢是用你的情感還有你的感覺來描述這張圖片，你要做的那個圖片，而不是簡單的告訴讀者說，你應該如何思考，或是你應該如何的感受。那如果讀者呢，他有一種相關，這種感覺相關叫做 associated， 就是跟他相關的這種感覺的話，那他們呢就會在腦海中創造出更好的這個畫面，那也使他們能夠投入這個閱讀呢更多一點，那他們就比較會有興趣。
Good. So we will begin with my story titled The Woods.
好，那接下來我們要講的這個故事呢，叫做森林。從這個森林這個故事開始。
And in this example I'm about to give, I will describe a place that has really stuck in my memory for a long time. This description is kind of a precursor to a longer story. 那在我們將要給予的這個例子裡面呢，我將要描述的，這是一個你在記憶裡面記了很久的一個故事哦。那這個描述是一篇長篇故事的一個開端，開端我們可以用這個字叫 precursor。 Okay, so first things first, let's brainstorm.
好，第一件事要做的時候，大家還記得嗎？就是什麼叫做腦力激盪 brainstorm。
Now, I've said this a lot of times before, but putting all of your ideas down is the first step. Get them all out of your head, because when you do longer works, these tools will really be a major help.
好，就像我們從前呢曾經說到過的，我們要把我們的所有的想法呢，先怎麼樣？先把它寫下來。好，先寫下來，然後讓他們從你的腦袋裡面流出來。因此呢，你以後呢，如果要寫比較長的作品的時候，這些呢就會很有幫助。這些寫下來的東西呢就會很有幫助。
Okay, so we will take a look here at my outline. I have my ideas out and written down, and now I can organize them. Often when teachers talk about outlines for descriptive writing, they will tell you to write down each sentence and then put the ideas for each sentence into their respective categories. 好。那我們現在呢，已經想辦法把我們的腦袋裡面的東西都寫出來，對不對？然後寫出來之後，接下來要做的就是 outline， 對不對？就是要幹嘛呢？就是要把它們組織好。那通常呢，我們在講到這種描述性的寫作的大綱的時候，我們的一個準則就是說啊，你要寫下你每一種感覺。然後呢，把每一種感覺有歸類的東西歸進去，好，每一個事物是歸成這個看到的還是聽到的，每一種感覺歸類它底下要寫的東西。好，那我們要這裡教到的這個字叫 respective， 就是個別的 categories， 叫做它的範疇裡面的東西，每一個範疇各自的範疇。So to begin with, I want to talk about and describe the senses that I had or that I felt in this magical moment here in the forest.
好，那接下來我們要描述呢，就是一個很神奇的時刻。
We'll start out with the smells. I smelled damp leaves, pine, fresh air, kind of that dog smell.
好，那接下來呢，我們就先看我们 感覺到的，就是我們聞到的是什麼哈？我們聞到什麼東西呢？我們聞到潮濕的葉子，我們聞到松樹，我們聞到新鮮的空氣，還有聞到什麼？聞到狗。
A couple of the sounds that I heard were footsteps in the gravel and a guitar playing.
好，那我們接下來描述的是什麼？是聲音。我們聽到什麼聲音呢？在這個歷史中的這個腳步聲，還有吉他的彈奏的聲音。
The sights that I want to talk about is the light that came through the trees.
然後接下來呢，要講的是視覺。那視覺可以講什麼呢？哎，這個穿過樹林的這種光。
And the feeling of touch that I want to talk about or describe is the cool breeze that I felt.
好，那接下来呢？接下来我们要看的是觸覺。觸覺呢是這個清風的這種觸覺。
And finally, I would also like to talk about this lasting memory.
好，最後呢，我們就要來談談這個 lasting。lasting 是持久的意思 ，memory 是記憶，持久的記憶。
So with all of these ideas out, it's time to organize them so that we can begin the real writing. As a side note, I find it better to what I call sleep on it. So I get all my ideas out and organize them, and then I get a good night's sleep. And then I will revisit everything and see if there are any changes that I want to make in the next day.
好，那我現在呢，既然我們的想法都已經想出來了，对不對？然後這個想法呢，也怎麼樣呢 ？organized 就是已經把它組織好嘍。然後我們可以真正的開始寫作的。那我們附帶的說明一下，就是說啊，我發現啊，這個最好呢。之後要怎麼樣呢？要 sleep on it， 就是說，sleep 是睡覺嘛，睡在那上面，什麼意思呢？就是你現在別做決定，你先想一想，可能第二天再來想說要怎麼寫，這樣可能是比較好的。
Okay, so let's start out with the first draft.
好，接下來我們看第一個初稿。
When you walk through the woods, you expect to hear certain sounds, the crunch of the path underfoot and the wind through the trees. But you don't expect to hear a lonely guitar playing in the middle of the forest. Walking through the woods is such a great way to relieve stress. The smell of damp leaves with the fresh air seems to push negativity out of your body. It is wonderful to fill your lungs with the cool breeze while the sounds you hear are rustling through the branches and the soft sound of your own steps. On one such outing, I stopped to enjoy some rather expensive gourmet coffee that I had brought with me. I took a seat on a log a bit away from the path. Here and there the sun shone through the trees like a spotlight on the forest floor. In one of those spotlights, a girl sat and played a guitar. Her voice and the melody were so soft that I had hardly heard them until I saw her. The scene was almost magical. So let's break this down little by little. Beginning with, when you walk through the woods, you expect to hear certain sounds, the crunch of the path underfoot and the wind through the trees. But you don't expect to hear a lonely guitar playing in the middle of the forest. Walking through the woods is such a great way to relieve stress.
好。我們剛才呢 ，Alan 老師他先念了一篇長長的文章。那篇長長的文章呢，就是他寫出來的第一個 draft， 就是第一個初稿。初稿當然是將來要修改，所以它並不是完美的。然後我們把那個初稿呢，一段一段的來解釋。那我們現在先來解釋第一段。第一段是這樣：當您在樹林中漫步的時候，你會希望呢聽到某一些聲音，比如說什麼呢？腳步聲。嘎吱吱的那個聲音，就是那個什麼 crunch 就是嘎吱嘎吱的那個聲音。然後呢，樹木在風中搖曳，但你不會希望聽到什麼呢？你不會想說你會聽到說森林中會有彈奏者的那種孤獨的吉他的聲音。那穿過樹林呢，是一個減輕壓力的一個好方法。
The smell of the damp leaves with the fresh air seems to push negativity out of the body. It is wonderful to fill your lungs with the cool breeze, while the only sounds you hear are the rustling of branches and the soft sound of your own steps. On one such outing, I stopped to enjoy some rather expensive gourmet coffee that I had brought with me. 好，那这裡說到什麼呢？他說，新鮮的空氣給這個潮濕的這個
damp， 就這個字叫做潮濕的 damp 的這個葉子呢，散發出的氣味似乎呢，把什麼呢？把這種負面的東西，這個叫什麼呢 ？negativity， 負面的東西的這種感受哈，排除到你的身體的外面，就是把它踢出你的身体這樣子。那這個涼爽的微風呢，充滿到你的肺部啊，真的是太好了啊！你会听到唯一的声音是什麼呢？這個樹枝啊，這個沙沙作響，這個沙沙作響叫做 rustling。這個 rustling 這個字，它原來的字是 rustle，R-U-S-T-L-E。那注意到這個發音哦，這個 T 是不發音的。然後它要把這個 E 去掉的時候，就加上 ing， 把這個字尾的 E 去掉，所以變成 rustling。以及呢，您自己的腳步的這個柔和的聲音，再一次這樣的這種郊遊，我們說 outing 叫做郊遊，我會停下來享用自己帶來的一些非常昂貴的 expensive 昂貴的美味的咖啡，叫做什麼呢？郭美是美味的咖啡。
I took a seat on a log a bit away from the path. Here and there the sun shone through the trees like a spotlight on the forest floor. In one of those spotlights, a girl sat and played the guitar. Her voice and melody were so soft that I had hardly heard it until I saw her. The scene was almost magical.
那我呢，坐在離這個路徑呢有一點遠的這個原木叫做 log， 坐在一個原木上，那到處呢都是那個陽光啊，像森林中的那種聚光燈一樣照的這個樹木哈，像聚光燈。那在其中的一個聚光燈就是陽光下面坐了一個女孩，那個女孩正在彈吉他，那她的聲音呢和旋律呢是如此的柔和，以至於呢我在看到這個女孩之前呢，我幾乎不能夠叫做 hardly 幾乎不能夠聽到她的聲音哦。那這個現場的這個景象呢是非常的神奇的。
Okay, so the scene is set. Now, this could be a descriptive paragraph that would be part of a whole narrative. Narrative paragraphs we will talk about in the next unit. And this is how you would create imagery that the reader could use to immerse themselves into a whole story. Again, you don't have to, but I like to give it a day and then revisit the work. You can also have someone proofread it and give you their opinions.
好，我们刚刚那个地方呢，已经把我们的场景啊设定好了。那这个场景呢，它可能是成为将来的整个叙述文它的一部分的描述，就是一个叙述文很长，它其中的一部分的描述可能在这里。那我們在下一個章節會討論這樣的敘述文的段落形式。那這樣的描述的段落啊，就是你所創造的故事的這個畫面呢，使讀者呢可以沉浸在裡面。同樣的，您呢不必這樣做，但是呢，我也建議你這樣做。你不一定要這樣做，就是呢，給他一天的時間。怎麼樣給他一天的時間呢？就是放着，先不要寫，先放着。然後接下來過明天呢，可能再回顧一下，哎，看看你的作品。那你也可以怎麼樣呢？你也可以讓別人來進行這個 proofread。proofread 就是怎樣幫你檢閱一遍，然後提供他的看法給您。
Okay, so now it's time for the rewrite.
然後現在呢，接下來我們要幹嘛？就來改寫。我們剛剛那是 first draft， 記得嗎？是一個草稿而已。那我們現在把它改寫。
So even as I look back at my own writing, I see a couple of things that I would like to change. So for example, twice I put in the paragraph, walk through the woods. Several times I used the word through. And some of the sentences are just too short.
好，那我們現在回去看看我們剛剛那個作品，我們就會發現有一些我們就想要改變的，就覺得不大完美，對不對？好，那比如說什麼呢？ Walk through the woods， 這個叫做穿越樹林，這個就寫了2次。那你說寫2次有不對嗎？其實它沒有不對，可是你同一個短短的文章，你同樣的東西寫2次，這樣就是不好的。然後呢，又用了一個叫什麼字啊？叫 through， 叫貫穿這個字，用了好多次，就從短短的一篇文章就用了好多 through 這個字。那有些句子呢又太短了，所以這些都是可以加以改變的。
So what are some other words that I can use instead of saying walk?
好，那首先呢，我們就要想 walk 走路這個字，我們有什麼字可以使用來代替 walk 這個字呢？
I can use words like stroll, hike, trek, and amble. They would all be suitable.
那我可以用什麼其他的字來代替 walk 這個字？你想想看哦，比如說我們可以用 stroll 漫步，還有什麼呢？遠足 hike， 還有什麼 trek 這個是什麼？跋涉。還有呢 amble 就緩緩的走，緩行，這些都是可以代替 walk 的字。
So another thing I noticed is that I use the word through 4 times in one paragraph, and that's unacceptable. I must find another way to say these sentences. Now, the first sentence is okay because it's the introduction, and the second through, I can change it to in. The second sentence is where I need to use different words for walk, and then reword the sentence so that I'm not using the word through again.
好，那接下来呢，我们看到了一个是 through 这个字，穿越。那这个字呢，总共就讲了4次，在一个小小的段落里面，这样是怎么样？不可接受的 ，unacceptable， 就是加上 un 在一个字字首就变成不能接受的。那所以呢，我必须要找到一种方式来表达这些意思，但是呢，又稍微改变一下。那首先第一个句子它是 OK 的，因为它第一次用到 through 这样子，它是 OK， 因为它是引言的部分。那第二个 through 呢，大家可以改成 in， 这样稍微改一下。那在第二个句子中呢，那接下来句子中我们又把 walk 这个字改掉，因为你改掉 walk 这个字，你就不一定要 through 了，对不对？你把这个 walk 这个字改掉，那句子呢就可以改变，不一定要 through。
Okay, so I could use different examples to change that sentence. So one, I would say, wooded hiking is such a great way.
好，那第一个我们可以讲说，那在森林中健行呢是一个很棒的方式。
Or I could say, wandering the woods is such a great way.
好，我们也可以讲说，那在树林里面游荡呢是一个很好的方式。
Or strolling the forest is such a great way.
好，然后接下来我们又可以改成什么呢？漫步森林，改成 strolling 这个字，就是一个很棒的方式。就是改这些字就可以不用一直用 walk 这个字哦。
Now, this would effectively get rid of the too many throughs. It would add a bit more variety to the paragraph and elevate it to a higher level of writing. Also, using forest would remove the repeat of the word woods so many times in the paragraph. So the next thing I need to do is combine some of the smaller sentences. Now remember back to the earlier units when you learned to make compound and complex sentences. This is what we need to do here.
好，那这样子做呢，你就会有效的 effectively 叫做有效的消除过多的这些 throughs。我们講了一大堆 throughs， 你就可以把它消掉，就不會有這些字。那這個段落呢，也會增加它的多樣性，而且提升這個字用到的是什麼 elevate 提升到你的寫作的水平，到一個比較高的水平。那接下來我們也可以想想看這個 forest 這個字，這個 forest 這個字你的使用它是森林嘛，它使用也可以使你不要一直講 woods 這個字，因為這個也是森林，意思是一樣，可是你換一個字來講，就有點像同義字的概念。那接下來要講的是呢，我們可以把簡短的句子怎麼辦？那簡短的句子該怎麼辦呢？就是我們以前學過的一個叫複合句，叫 compound sentences， 一個叫複雜句，叫 complex sentences。這兩種句子的使用呢，就可以使你呢句子不會都是短短的句子。那這就是我們這裡要做的。
Now, if you look at that last sentence, it is a short sentence, but I did that to make it a short standalone sentence so that it creates a powerful feeling that sums up the reason for describing the woods. But the 4 sentences before that, they could be joined with words like while and. Finally, I would like to add more about taste. Now, most teachers will agree that when describing taste in descriptive paragraphs, it is hard to do unless you're talking about food. But we're going to try it a little bit here.
然後接下來呢，我們就看了我們的短文呢，它的最後一句是一個很簡短的獨立的句子。那這個句子是 OK 的，為什麼呢？因為我們寫這麼短的感覺，它是要營造一種很強烈的感覺，然後描述出，我為什麼要寫這個樹林的這個原因，所以要短而有力。那這個句子之前，就是最後一句話之前的4個句子呢，我們可以怎麼樣呢？我們可以用一些連接詞，比如說用一些 while 啦，用一些 and 這樣的簡單的連接詞，把它連接起來。那最後呢，我們想要補充一下，就是 taste 這個就是嘗起來怎麼樣這個感覺啊。那這種感覺，大部分的老師會覺得說，你要講的是這種描述性的東西，如果你不是講這個吃的東西，你就很難這個專門 specifically 就是很專門的來講它的 taste， 除非你是要講吃的啦、飲料啦之類的。
So now I've gone through and made the changes that I would like to make. Let's take a look at the final draft.
好，那根據我們剛剛講解的這些改變呢，我們接下來呢，看我們的完稿，大家看一下。
When you walk through the woods, you expect to hear certain sounds, the crunch of the path underfoot and the wind in the trees. But you don't expect to hear a lonely guitar playing in the middle of the forest. Strolling the forest is such a great way to relieve stress. The smell of the damp leaves with the fresh air seems to push negativity out of the body. It is wonderful to fill your lungs with the cool breeze, while the only sounds that you hear are the rustling of the branches and the soft sound of your own steps. On one such outing, I stopped to enjoy some rather expensive gourmet coffee that I had brought with me. Funny how a sip of delicious coffee can also touch one's soul. I took a seat on a log a bit away from the path, while here and there the sun shone through the trees like a spotlight on the forest floor. In one of those spotlights, a girl sat and played guitar. And her voice and the melody were so soft that I had hardly heard them until I saw her. Even then, it seemed only vaguely in the distance. The scene was almost magical.
好，那我们来看看哦。当您啊在这个树林中漫步的时候，你会希望可以听到某些声音，比如说什么呢？脚步声啊，嘎吱吱的声音，还有树上的風。但是呢，你不會期望會聽到這個森林裡面有彈奏的這種孤獨的吉他的聲音。那漫步森林呢，是減緩壓力的好方法。新鮮的空氣給這個潮濕的葉子啊，散發出來的氣味，似乎把這種負面的感覺都排除在身體的外面。涼爽的微風啊，充滿了你的肺部，真是太好了。而您聽到的唯一的聲音呢，是什麼？是樹枝啊沙沙的作響，以及您的腳步聲柔和的聲音。那在這樣的一次的郊遊中啊，我停下來享用自己帶來了一些昂貴的美味的咖啡。有趣的是啊，你喝一口這樣子的美味的咖啡，也能夠打動你的心靈哦。我坐在遠離這種路徑的一個原木上面，那坐在那裡呢，它的陽光呢照着這個樹木，就像森林裡面的那個聚光燈一樣。在一個聚光中啊，有一個女孩啊坐着彈吉他，那她的聲音呢和這個旋律是非常的柔和，以至於我直到我看見這個女孩的時候，我才聽到這個吉他的聲音哦。那在有距離的時候，感覺這種就是很模糊 ，vaguely 就是很模糊，就是在遠就很模糊的聲音哦。那現場的這種景象呢，幾乎是非常神奇的。
Okay, so finally let's look at concluding a descriptive writing paragraph.
好，接下來我們來看呢，我們要怎麼樣把它做一個 concluding，就是把它做一個結論。
Now I've shown you the tools needed to write an effective descriptive paragraph. Remember, this skill can be used in several fields of work, but this is particular it can help with persuasive writing, narrative writing, and expository essays, as well as long works like novels.
好。那我們剛才呢已經展示的這個描述，這個生動的描述應該怎麼樣做？這樣，那請記住，這種技能呢，除了在這種很多領域上其實可以用到，比如說你可以在哪裡用到？你可以用在這種說服性的文章 （persuasive）， 你可以用在敘述性的文章叫 narrative， 還可以用在說明性的文章，譬如說什麼 expository 的這種 essays 的論文，以及你如果要寫一個長長的小說或什麼，也都可以用這些技巧。
Remember, the written word doesn't use visuals unless it's a textbook or a book for children. So you have to make the picture with your words. Show the reader that you experienced what you experienced through your eyes, and have them imagine what it is you are imagining.
那你記得哦，除非我們寫的是一個教科書或者是一種兒童讀物，否則呢，文字呢一般呢是不會使用圖像在旁邊的。所以當你要描述一個東西、一個畫面的時候，你就要展示給讀者說，哎，你親眼經歷的東西，讓他們呢可以自己想象出來。
Look at this this paragraph I'm about to read for you. I want you to proofread it, see if you can find any mistakes and what changes you would make to it.
好，那接下來我們要做一個簡短的練習。那這邊練習就是一個短短的段落，你要做的是什麼？你就要訂正一下哪裡有錯誤，或者哪些改變可以把它變得更好。
I've titled this paragraph "The Grand Canyon."
好，這個叫做大峽谷。
It's hard to describe the enormity of the Grand Canyon, but when you see it, you understand how small we are and how large our planet is. From the edge of the canyon, you can see the Colorado River, and it looks like a thin snake winding through the ground far below. But in reality, it is quite a wide body of water. I was there in the middle of summer, and it is quite hot there in this part of the year. You can taste the heat on your tongue, feel it in your eyes. It is wise to bring water with you, not only for thirst, but also because they sell bottles there for an absolutely ridiculous price. It's so difficult to take in it's everything you see. The sky, the depth of the hole in the ground, and the vastness from one side to the next. Really, the best way to see the canyon is from the air, but that too is quite expensive. What I found most stunning is when there are no tourists around and you have to walk away to avoid them. You can hear nothing, absolutely nothing. The absence of sound reflects the totality of the empty space in front of you.
我们很难呢描述大峡谷它的巨大之处，但是呢，当您看到这个大峡谷的时候，你就会知道呢，我们呢自己呢是有多么的小，我们的星球呢是有多么的大。从这个峡谷呢，它的边缘，你可以看到科罗拉多河，那它看起来呢像是一条细蛇蜿蜒的穿越某处的地面，但是呢，实際上它是在一个廣闊的水域。那暑假的期間呢，我曾經去過那個地方，那是一年裡面呢很熱的時候，那你可以試探一下它的熱，並且呢，在你的眼睛中可以感到那個熱氣。那很明智的做法是怎麼樣呢？是你隨身攜帶水。那這不僅僅是因為你會口渴，而且是因為他們在那裡出售的這個水的價格啊，絕對的是很荒謬的，叫 ridiculous， 這個字叫做很荒謬的。那吸收您所看到的這一切呢，是如此的困難。天空、洞的深度，以及從一側到另一側的廣闊空間，確實，從空中觀看峽谷的最佳方法是從空中看，但是呢，這個呢也是昂貴的方法。那我發現呢，最令人驚訝的是呢，周圍呢是沒有什麼遊客，那你必須呢，你不用怎麼樣避開這些遊客，那你呢也不會聽到什麼聲音這樣子，甚至呢這樣沒有聽到聲音呢，就反映這個面前這種空白空間的這個整體。
So I want you to go back through the paragraph and look to see if there are words that are repeated too much. Look to see if there are sentences that can be omitted, or if you can build complex and/or compound sentences.
好，那同學們該怎麼做這個修改的部分？記得我們這一章最前面的時候說的，第一個，你去看文章裡面有沒有重複的字，不然呢就看看什麼有沒有太短的字要把它合起來的，或者要省略一些句子。好，那今天呢，我們非常感謝大家收看今天的課程，那我們下禮拜再見，謝謝大家。